Okay. Hey guys, what's up? This is False Bulls 123, and this is day 52 of my vlogging challenge. Anyway, this is sort of just a little bit that I did yesterday, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of the books I'm reading, kind of give you an update on that, since we're going to be hitting our quarantine wrap up pretty soon in a couple weeks. So this is just kind of a mini update. I had fun talking about some of the books I've been reading, and if I've been enjoying them and all that type of thing. So, heads up, I'm going to get into it and just enjoy ourselves. In here, we'll probably just give you a bit of an update on my reading. Like I said, I really wanted to do more book style videos, and so I think these little updates are fun because you get to know what I'm doing and participating in in the day to day, and it's all fun like that. So I've been reading 3 books as currently. I mean, technically I have 15 books somewhere that are half read, but 3 books currently. One is Embedded, Dan Abnett. I'm a decent portion, about 50% through this one, and I'm really liking how it's picked up. And I'm not going to get too into it. It's basically a futuristic sci-fi novel where we've colonized we're I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Pretty much post-globalization has already happened. We have colonized the stars. And so we're sort of still in this Cold War between socialist and capitalistic states, but that's more in the background. And so currently they're dealing with this insurgency or this uprising that's happening in this rural agricultural area. So it's very noir, strangely enough, the style of writing, and it's very sci-fi at the same time, which is kind of interesting because you don't expect to see Sam Spade and what the guy from Blade Runner is in the same sort of setting, but it's kind of that feeling to it. But at the same time, it definitely has really at the same time a very sort of Cold War effect where you have the socialist bloc states and you have the more American capitalist states and that's the central power of the conflict. And so Meg. I'm not going to get too far into the politics of the book, which I think is interesting that there are there's politics as part of the world building, but it's more nuanced and subtle than a lot of other books. I'm definitely enjoying my read, and I'm not giving it justice with the description, but I'll talk about this more when I actually do my wrap up. 2 other books I'm reading as I was getting a little far along with Undercurrents with Nora Roberts, and I'll have to Next book I read was Nora Roberts' Undercurrents, and I'll try to put a picture right there so you can see it. So I'm going to go into spoilers a little bit to talk about the plot, but I'm really enjoying it right now. So, spoilers, guys! Stop paying attention if you don't want to know about it, like them. So, at the beginning of the book, and this happens literally about maybe 5-10 pages in, you discover that the male lead's father is domestically and physically abusive. And I find the depiction to be very extreme. He is very physically aggressive. He just goes... As domestic abuse depictions go, it is very, very far into, how, aggressive and physically violent they can be. And I think it's a realistic and accurate depiction, but I also think that it is a bit more... I'm really trying to find the right words. That's depicted a bit more than extreme than you might expect in other literature, or even in, I guess, a more toned-down novel. I don't think that it's caricaturized or exaggerated beyond realism, but I do think that it is depicted a bit more than extreme than you might actually find in real life. Not to say that people can't be that abusive or that violent, but generally it's a bit more. But generally those relationships are a bit more subtle, a bit more, I guess, insidious and underneath. I think it depicts, a lot of the aspects of abusive relationships, the controlling and the manipulation and, the emotional abuse really well. But at the same time, I do feel that it chooses the furniture just a little bit with the depiction. I don't think that detracts from the novel, but at the same time, it's they go from, 0 to, 60, wife beater pretty quickly. I think it was really interesting because I wasn't expecting domestic abuse to be an aspect of the book, and so that was really surprising for me. But I think Nora Roberts deals with a lot of really hard topics in a lot of her novels, and I forget that when I'm reading her. Because I always, when I see romance, when I see that sort of genre, I'm always expecting just this very milquetoast woman who does boring things, finding some manic pixie dream guy who's going to rock her world and give her good dick. And then Nora Roberts shows up and she's like, yeah, we'll get to the dickin', but like first you need to deal with this trauma. And I'm just like, okay, this is zesty. I can work with this. And so the initial like, sort of thriller aspect where we're dealing with this very horrific and just stressful situation is going to be really interesting because I think it is going to characterize the main lead very well. I think I've already got from the couple tales I've read, there's already a great amount of characterization. And like even side characters, she can do multiple points of view really well. And I believe that from the 3 chapters I've read, there's already been like 3 separate character point of views. Like they have like the main guy, but then they also have his aunt and his mother in that point of view. And I think that is really well done. One small caveat, one small problem I did have with the book, however, was the children, and I'm not sure if I have an issue with the characters' perspectives or if it's with the writing, but if it is the characters' perspectives, I do think Nora Roberts did a lot of research and depicted it very accurately. Was the children really blame the mother for allowing this abuse to continue towards them. And I think that's that's really shitty, but I also think that's like a very accurate depiction of an abusive household. Because a lot of the times the children will come to resent their mother because they see her as partially an instigator. When a lot of times the abused partner is usually stuck between a rock and a hard place where they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. And so I think that sentiment towards their mother is actually really accurate of the dynamics and how that happens, how they'll see her as an instigator because she does nothing to stop it. But at the same time, she has to do whatever she can not to instigate it further. And I'm not trying to be victim blaming. That's really just the mindset of it. And I don't really have any really good studies or anything to back up that sort of thing, but it is something that happens a lot in the relationships and something that's noted and talked about. And so I thought that depiction was really accurate, especially with how the characters interact with each other because of that situation, because of this shit human being. And so it's a very good and accurate portrayal, and I think it's interesting because you don't always see domestic abuse in a family context where the children are involved or where the father will harm the children, because sometimes every relationship, every dynamic that involves that is different. And so I think that it is very interesting. If in domestic abuse, I guess portrayals, if there's one thing I would wish for is not always so much the extreme version of the very I guess drunkard, beats his wife, physically abusive all the time type person, because there is a lot of nuance to these situations. There's a lot of build up and a lot more subtle abuse that happens before anyone ever lays blows. And I wish that a lot, if people were going to write about this, that they would put more time into the emotional abuse side of it and the psychological abuse and the gaslighting and all these other aspects that lead up to the actual physical actions, because that is really part of it. I also wish that when it comes to abuse descriptions, they would really talk about the conflict comfort mechanics and how that really fucks people up and how they have to bond with their abuser through just human psychology. And I don't feel like a lot of books really discuss that aspect. But at the same time, the book's focus is not on the mother, it is on the kid and how he is dealing with living in this abusive household and how he has to toe this perfect line and do everything because it is his life in jeopardy and he might harm his sister. And I think that it's dealing with the conflict really well and it helps you really sympathize with the character. I have a lot of respect for Nora Roberts. I think she's doing a very, very good job in depicting it and being respectful towards the issues raised up by it. But it's also a lot darker than I was expecting from a book. Anyway, guys, spoilers over. That being said, I haven't really gotten too far in that book, so do not spoil it for me because I'm really liking where this is going. I have a lot of hope for the characters, and yeah. Third book I've been reading is My Life in France by Julia Child. I mentioned that previously on my last one, and oh, it's so good. I love it. It's great. Julia Child is probably she's definitely been an inspiration for me, like, as a cook. And I'm just really enjoying her style and her personality, and it's just worked for me. Currently in the novel, I'm I'm listening to it on audiobook, so I guess like in the audiobook, I'm gotten like a decent part along. I think about a third into it, but I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. I'm listening to it like while clipping blackberry vines, and so I just like get to have some nice time in the sun, and then it's weird because like I'm clipping blackberry vines, like sweating buckets, and then just this lovely like I don't remember the name of the voice actress, but I'll put it up here if I remember. And basically, she's just like, oh yes, and we made all of these like and she just like lists off all of these French words with like perfect pronunciation, and I'm just like, oh wow, I pronounced all of these wrong in culinary school. Because she talked about like potatoes de no, canard orange, and I'm just like, actually, believe she meant to canard de l'orange, and I thought that was interesting because we always see it just sort of the l'orange, probably don't usually see in recipes, and so I thought it was really fascinating because I did recognize a few of the dishes she mentioned, but then she'll list other things that like I don't recognize. And as French go, I recognize a little bit because I know a few French words, being a cook, of course. But then she'll also mention a lot of the dishes which are very specific to French cuisine. And I think it's interesting because as a culinary major, as somebody who is traditionally trained, I do have like a basic knowledge of French technique. Like, I know, like, the difference between velouté and espagnol. But I also am not, like, heavily trained in that tradition. I don't know 101 ways to make eggs, for instance. I believe that's a little bit of an urban legend, but, like, if you're a cook, you probably understand that reference. And so I just think it's really interesting because there's a lot I can relate to, but there's a lot of fascination I have with it. And I'm not that interested in French cuisine. Mostly, I think that's really just a cultural aspect. So, if you guys don't know, Americans just really have never had much of a love for French cuisine, and this dates all the way back to colonial times where a lot of American cooks felt that French cuisine was very opulent and very overly refined. I definitely have a lot of French dishes I enjoy, but there's also a lot of food that I just don't care for taste-wise. Strangely enough, Americans are obsessed with Italian cuisine, and you can see this from obviously our adaptation of things like Neapolitan ice cream or like pizza, but also things such as oh shoot, I forgot my entire train of thought. But basically, like you notice it in a lot of other dishes that we just absolutely freaking love, and they are Italian. We love pastas. We love a lot of other dishes they make, and we like to incorporate that into our own food. And I think that's mostly just because we have similar palates taste-wise. There's similar profiles. We love tomatoes, we love cheese, we love basil, and so we like to incorporate those things in. And obviously, American and Italian cuisine is very different. For instance, Italians do not eat very many pasta dishes throughout the day. Generally, and this is not from being Italian or knowing anyone who is Italian, this is simply from my own research. To my best understanding, Italians should have a few light meals in the morning and lunchtime. This is your antipasti. This is a lot of greens and bread and cheeses and very light sustenance. And then you'll have more hearty dishes like your lasagna, like your other pasta dishes in the afternoons as a supper. Where in America, we tend to have very large meals throughout. And I think there's several reasons for that, of course, but I'm going to get off that because this was not a thing to talk about the differences between American and European cuisines. This is about Julia Childs, so sorry. Yeah, basically I'm really enjoying just the style and how it's written. It's one part travelogue, it's one part food writing, it's one part memoir, and it works for me. It's exactly the type of food writing I enjoy, and I really love memoirs and food writing that talks about that type of thing because I love people that love food. Because I love food, and that really gets, that really gets to me. Because I remember Julia Child was talking about how she spent hundreds of hours, learning about mayonnaise, and I'm just like, that's fascinating. And I don't like mayonnaise at all. I think it's important for, a lot of dishes, but I don't care for it taste-wise, because I don't really like eggs that much. I know I'm weird. But I completely understand the need to, have this fascination with emulsified dressings and all these different aspects. Because, I can literally rave for days about different forms of, creme vette or, brown sugars. And I think that's fascinating. I remember like listening to her talk about there was different types of butter in France, and I'm thinking there's different types of butter, and I wanted to know more. I'm just like, there's multiple kinds of butter out there. I need to know that shit. Like, because like as a cook, I'm the type of bitch that cares what type of salt I have in my kitchen. I'm just like, I need to get kosher salt. Here are the exact reasons why. This is why iodine isn't as great. And all these other things, because details and aspects and how food is grown and developed and all these things are so fascinating. And I can really relate to a lot of the things that she talks about, a lot of the things that she wants to cook. Another great aspect, another just like part that really just resounded with me was when she was discussing she had failed a practical test for the Cordon Bleu in France, which is a very high-end culinary institute. And that was because she had been studying for these very high-end, very complex French dishes, but she had not studied for some really basic ones that were in, like, a packet that were, like, for a lesser class. Because she had basically taken, like, the extreme, like, boot camp class where she was slamming shit out and being the baddest bitch in the kitchen. And not, like, the little, like, housemaid one where they're just like, I made you a pot roast, tee hee, or whatever. And so she grabs the book, she reads it, and she finds these 3 dishes. It was a caramel flan, it was this obnoxious, like, veal roast or something that apparently you shoved it in a brown paper bag and you cooked it, and I'm just like, what bullshit is that? That sounds dumb. And some egg dish, and I believe that it was some sort of cuddled egg. I don't remember exactly. I don't care for cuddled eggs. I always thought they were a bit weird. Anyway. And she literally just, like, she says, I go down the kitchen, I bust them out, and I eat them. And that completely related to me, because as a cook, you have to make everything, You have to really make things, even if they're not your type, even if you don't enjoy them, because it is part of your expertise and your experience. Hollandaise makes me sick to my stomach. I cannot stand the taste of it. It literally makes me ill. But when I was learning to make hollandaise, I forced myself to taste it until that hollandaise was absolutely perfect. And that pepper and the lemon and the Tabasco and everything that was in that hollandaise was on point. Because that is my job as a cook. Even if I can't stand the taste of it, I need to know what it tastes like, because that makes me a better cook. And I could completely relate to that. And I can, like, really admire and understand what that action. And so I really am getting a lot out of the book just because I can relate my own experiences as a cook and as a culinary student, as all of these different things, to her own gastronomical and culinary experiences. And so I'm really enjoying just her perspective and her love and, like, fervor for food. And it really makes me appreciate, like, French cuisine. And so I'm really enjoying the book, as you guys can tell. Anyway, guys, this got a bit long. If I'm being honest, I might actually chop this up and do this for, like, Sunday. So, yeah, I'm going to do that, actually. So, guys, that was just sort of like a mini reading update. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoyed this vlog. And I'm going to, shut up now because whatever. And, yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. This is False Bulls 123, and I'm signing off.